When a country takes on something like this, what really happens to its economy? The United States, Mexico, Canada gamble, and yes, I said gamble because that's exactly what it is. 3 countries, 16 cities, billions of dollars on the table, and when this tournament is over, some will look like geniuses, while others will quietly be counting the damage. Today, I'm not going to talk about football. I'm going to talk about numbers, the real ones. The kind that show up in a country's GDP report a year after everyone has forgotten who won the final. Give me 13 or 14 minutes and you'll understand exactly what hosting the World Cup really costs and what it really pays back, because those two numbers are almost never the same. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at why cities fight so hard to host it. Then, the real construction bill nobody talks about on television. The tourism boom and why it's smaller than you probably think. The small businesses that become big winners, and the small businesses that quietly get pushed aside. And finally, the part that matters most, what's left 5 years after the cameras are gone. Stay until the end, because I'm going to ask you a question, and I want a real answer in the comments. Let's begin. Section 1. Why countries want this, alright? First of all, why would anyone want this headache? Because on paper, hosting the World Cup looks like the biggest economic opportunity a country could ever ask for. Here's the sales pitch governments hear: millions of visitors, a full month of global media attention, construction jobs, permanent infrastructure upgrades, and supposedly years of increased tourism thanks to the country's new global image. It's a great sales pitch. I've sat in enough boardrooms to tell you this. Great sales pitches are exactly where you should slow down and read the fine print. Because here's what that sales pitch intentionally leaves out. You're not just hosting a tournament. You're taking on a massive construction project with a fixed deadline that can never be postponed. Whether your stadium is ready or not, the opening match is going to be played. And in any industry, that kind of pressure almost always means the final bill ends up costing more than the original budget promised. Section 2. The real construction bill. So let's talk about that bill. Stadium upgrades, new transportation lines, hotel expansions, security infrastructure. And I want you to notice something. Almost every major tournament in history has cost more than the original estimate, not just a little more. Sometimes twice as much, sometimes 3 times as much. At this point, it's almost a law of nature. Announce a budget for a mega event and treat that number as the floor, not the ceiling. And here's the part that always amazes me. A huge portion of that spending goes toward things that are incredibly useful for about 1 month, then sit half-used for the next 20 years. You've probably seen those photos online. Huge stadiums in former host countries, grass growing through the seats, completely abandoned. This isn't a football story, it's a depreciation story. An asset that loses almost all of its real value the day the final match is played. Now, the United States, Mexico, Canada model is actually smarter in one important way, and I want to give it credit for that. Most of these stadiums already existed, NFL stadiums, existing arenas, simply renovated and repurposed. That's a far better financial model than building everything from scratch. Far less of the beautiful empty stadium 5 years later problem. And by the way, there's a real strategic lesson there. Whenever you can reuse an existing asset instead of building a brand new one from the ground up, your risk drops dramatically. That works here, and it works in your own investments too. Section 3. Tourism and why it's smaller than you think. Now let's talk about tourism, because this is the part marketing brochures get really excited about, and where reality is a little more modest. Yes, millions of visitors arrive, hotels are full, restaurants are packed. Taxi drivers have the best month of the year. I'm not arguing with any of that, but here's what economists keep finding, tournament after tournament. A meaningful portion of that extra tourism isn't actually extra, it's displaced. The regular tourists, the business travelers, the people who would have visited that city anyway, simply don't come, because ordinary people see hotel prices triple, see airline tickets explode, and say, "I'll visit another time, thanks." So the net increase in tourism is real, but it's usually smaller than the headline number, and it's extremely concentrated. A few weeks, a handful of neighborhoods, areas close to specific stadiums. This isn't a rising tide lifting the entire country. It's more like a heavy rainstorm falling on one field while the rest of the farm stays dry. Section 4. Small business winners and losers. Now this is where it becomes personal, because this is where real people's lives genuinely change. If you own a hotel, a restaurant, or a bar within walking distance of a stadium, you might experience the single best month in your business's entire history. I'm serious. If you positioned yourself correctly ahead of time, you earned real, well-deserved money. And here's the part nobody puts in the tourism board's promotional video. A lot of small local businesses actually get pushed aside during these events. Landlords smell tournament money and dramatically raise rents for short-term rentals. Street vendors are removed because of security zones. The regular local customers who keep many businesses alive during the other 11 months of the year sometimes avoid the entire area, because overnight it turns into a tourist zoo where prices have doubled. So this isn't small businesses everywhere win, it's the small business right next to the spotlight wins big. The small business 2 blocks away sometimes quietly loses. Once again, location determines everything. Sounds a lot like real estate investing, doesn't it? Because essentially, it is. Section 5. Jobs, real or temporary. Let's talk about jobs, because this is another area that's constantly exaggerated. Yes, construction jobs appear. Yes, hotels and restaurants hire more workers. But here's the honest summary. Most of those jobs are temporary. They're tied directly to the event schedule. Construction workers finish the stadium, then move on to the next project. The extra hotel staff hired for the tournament are often laid off once the crowds leave. For many working people, it's a genuine short-term income boost. And I don't want to minimize that. A good paycheck is a good paycheck, and anyone working hard for one deserves respect. But whenever a government announces this tournament created 200,000 jobs, you should ask the same follow-up question every good investor asks after every impressive headline. For how long? Because a 3-month job and a 3-year job are not the same thing, even if they appear as the same number in a press release. Section 6. Who really wins in the long run? So who actually wins this gamble over the long term? The cities that use the tournament as an excuse to upgrade infrastructure they already needed. Better transportation, better airports, better roads. Those cities usually come out ahead, because that infrastructure continues generating returns for decades after the tournament is forgotten. That's smart. Using a temporary event to finance a permanent improvement. The cities that build shiny, single-purpose stadiums without a realistic plan for what comes afterward. Those are the cities you'll see in those sad photo galleries 10 years later. The exact same event, a completely different financial outcome, entirely because of decisions made years before a single ticket was ever sold. And honestly, this applies to far more than hosting the World Cup. It applies to almost every major opportunity in life. The event itself doesn't determine the outcome. The planning before the event does. Anyone can throw a party. Only some people build something that outlasts the party. Section 7. The United States, Mexico, Canada angle. Now let's focus on this specific gamble. 3 countries sharing one tournament. And honestly, it's one of the most interesting economic experiments in World Cup history. Spreading the burden across 3 economies spreads the construction risk, it spreads the infrastructure burden, and naturally, it spreads the rewards as well. The United States brings enormous existing stadium infrastructure and the world's largest consumer market. Mexico brings experience. They've hosted this tournament before, and experience on a project this large is more valuable than most people realize. Canada brings additional venues and access to a market that normally doesn't receive this level of global football attention. 3 different economies, 3 different currencies, 3 different tax systems, all trying to coordinate one enormous event. That's incredibly complicated. If it works well, it becomes a blueprint other regions copy for future tournaments. If parts of it go badly, it becomes the case study a finance professor uses in a lecture 10 years from now. Either way, we're watching a live economic experiment unfold in real time, and most people watching the matches don't even realize it. Closing Bali, strong, warm, direct engagement. So that's the real scoreboard of this gamble. Construction costs almost always end up higher than promised. The tourism boost is real, but smaller and more concentrated than advertised. Some small businesses genuinely win, others quietly get pushed aside. The jobs are mostly temporary, unless the country uses the event as an excuse to build something permanent underneath it all. Now I have a question for you, and I want your honest answer in the comments, not just a quick like. Out of the 3, the United States, Mexico, or Canada, 5 years from now after all the dust has settled, which one do you think comes out financially ahead? Pick one and tell me why, because I have my own opinion, and I'm sure some of you are going to disagree with it. Honestly, I hope you do. And one more question. If your own city had the opportunity to host something this massive, would you want it? Would you take the gamble? Or would you pass? Let me know down below. If this gave you a new way to look at mega events, subscribe, because that's what we do here. We look beyond the noise and go straight to where the real money is moving. I'll see you in the next video.